Free Pride Parade is going to take place very soon in Glasgow, and there is an interesting ban at this particular Pride Parade. Apparently, they will not allow drag queens to perform. Now, usually when there are Pride events, drag queens have a prominent role in them, but in this case, they're very concerned about cis drag individuals, okay? So cis drag basically means men who identify as men, but they like to dress up as drag queens. All right, that's the simplest way that I can explain it to you. Now, they did explain why they made this decision. Those who are putting the event together gave this explanation. In a statement outlining the reasons for the ban, Free Pride Glasgow said it was concerned that trans people or those questioning their gender might feel uncomfortable should drag queens perform. It was felt by the group within the trans non-binary caucus that some drag performance, particularly cis drag, hinges on the social view of gender and making it into a joke. However, transgender individuals do not feel as though their gender identity is a joke. This can particularly be difficult for those who are not out and still present as the gender they were assigned at birth. While it was discussed whether we could have trans drag acts perform, it was agreed that as it would not be appropriate to ask any prospective drag acts whether or not they identified as trans.
All right, guys, I got to help out in my own way, and you might not perceive it that way, by translating between you guys and the rest of the world, okay? Because nobody else has any idea what you're talking about, right? And so when you get this deep buried into your ideology, you start to speak a different language, and you're in your own bubble, right? So when you say things like the trans non-binary caucus, nobody has any idea what you're saying, okay? And you use the word cis all the time as if people know what that means. Almost no one knows what that means. So when you say cis drag, you've lost people entirely, okay? So now, you might have legitimate reasons for that. This might be an interesting internal discussion, which it basically is, to be fair, right? In Scotland about this particular parade. And I get it. Some people who are transgender might think like, wait, they're having a good time over there, the drag queens. They're not really having the same issues we have. Are they making fun of us? Now, I don't think that there are straight guys going into the Pride events to make fun of trans people. I don't think that's what's happening. And I don't even think that they think that, right? But they're made a little uncomfortable by it. So it's not my place to tell you that you shouldn't be uncomfortable by that. And I get it. I get why you're uncomfortable. But you got to be open, and you can't get lost in a trans non-binary caucus cloud, okay? And perceptions of the movement matter in the outside world. It's the same issue, not same, but similar issue that I had with Black Lives Matter the other day, right? They go in, they disrupt Martin O'Malley, some justification for that, and Bernie Sanders' speech, and here's a guy who's fought for civil rights for 50 years, and you're shouting him down. You, in your own internal bubble and perspective and context, think you have a perfectly good case to make, but to the outside world, you seem like you're shouting down an ally, and people get turned off by it. Once you get into, no, the drag queens aren't drag enough, or they're not, or they're too cis, or they're this, or they're that, I'll tell you what the rest of the world's going to do. You like it, you don't like it, that's up to you. But they're going to throw their hands up and go, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, I can't figure it out. I can't win with these people. They're so sensitive. Jesus, now the drag queens are not sensitive enough? And so I'm afraid that pushes them in the wrong direction when we want them to be accepting.
Yeah, so I have somewhat of a different perspective on this because I didn't realize that there was tension between the trans community and drag queens, but there certainly is, and I think that there are definitely legitimate points by the transgender community. And then in this particular case, I think that they're being a little unfair to the drag queen community. So there was a show by RuPaul where they would use language like she-male, right? So he had like a game where they would show a person, and the game was male or she-male. And the transgender community was upset about it, right? Because they're like, look, here is a drag queen who's very famous, who's kind of making fun of the situations that we're in, the kind of discrimination that we deal with. And I think that that's fair. Look, she-male is a derogatory term. So if they don't want people using those types of terms, that's fine. But I think overall, when it comes to events like a Pride event, drag queens are their own community. They're not just there to fuck around. They're people who receive pleasure and enjoyment in dressing this way, being this way. They are their own community. So who's to say that that community is less important than another community? Who's to say that this community should be excluded? You see what I'm saying?
I'm telling you, man, you're going to lose people if you live out that to this extreme degree, okay? You're going to get upset at me, that's fine, okay? But you find a better fighter for the cause of equal rights for everybody, good luck. Have at it, Hoss. I don't know if you can find a better fighter for that. But when you start talking about how RuPaul is too insensitive to the transgender community, the rest of the country and the rest of the world is going to be like, what? Jesus Christ. No, we're not hearing you out anymore, right? They're going to shut it down.
But
they're like, RuPaul's not allowed to kid around about male or female. Like now, and by the way, you think they all know shemale's derogatory? They don't know that, right? So there needs to be a process to do education on that. Maybe you could make an argument this is part of that process, but don't come out so strong like, no, that's being hateful. Then you're like, people are going to say, I give up. I give up. I'm not going to try anymore. I'm not going to try to understand. I'm not going to try to expand rights to everybody because no matter what I do, it's not good enough because it's too cis, it's too this, it's too that, right? I want to make sure that doesn't happen. And I just think this gets to look, keeping it real, I think it's extreme.
Well, I think banning them is definitely extreme. But again, I really do think that the transgender community has some legitimate points. Look, shemale is not a good term. You don't want to use the word shemale, right? Because people do use that type of language in order to discriminate against the transgender community. But again, I'm going to repeat myself, the drag queen community or the cross-dressing community is also its own community, right? They also want to live their lives in a certain way. So who's to say that they're not allowed to participate in an event like this? I don't know.
Yeah, look, I'm not defending the word shemale. I get it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't always get it. I got it fairly recently because sometimes things change, right? Yeah. But if you're having this kind of internal fighting and the rest of the world sees it and they think, well, if RuPaul is not friendly enough to gay and transgender rights and LGBT rights, and well then, what could I possibly do?
To be fair, again, to the transgender community, RuPaul is very adamant about his love or her love, depending on how this person is dressed, for the word tranny, right? So
they hate that.
They hate that. And
right.
I think they hate that in a very legitimate way. Like, I totally understand that. So, look, there are definitely legitimate arguments and legitimate tension between these two groups of people. But again, I think that
you're upset at that. I get it, right?
Yeah.
You got a specific issue with RuPaul. I get it. But you got to let everybody march.
Yeah, I agree.
You got to if you start excluding people like this, you're going down on the wrong road. It's not going to end well. I don't think it's helpful to the cause at all to get everybody equal rights.